I'm Andrew Salmon and welcome to WEC TV. Now for our first interview we have a most appropriate guest. He's one of the leading thinkers on global energy issues, and by no coincidence he is also the Secretary General of the World Energy Council itself. Welcome, Christoph Frei. I understand you're very busy now, so thanks for taking the time. Christoph, you've mentioned that this is going to be a big year for the Congress. Is this the biggest year ever?
Well, it is obviously for the Congress itself. It's an amazing year. We have over 6,000 participants registered, over 50 ministers confirmed.
50 ministers?
Over 50 ministers confirmed, over 110 countries participating. We have 270 speakers. We have over 400 media. It's a record year for us in terms of interest.
It's a monster year. You're going to be a little bit busy. Okay. Let's talk seriously. You've mentioned that this may be a critical year for the global energy sector. That sounds a bit dramatic. Why is 2013 so important for energy?
2013, or more broadly, the context in which we are is one of massive uncertainty. And many say we have not seen that kind of uncertainty before. We have seen, on the one hand, prices change, collapse in solar, for instance. We have seen the post-Fukushima Fukushima context having impact on nuclear costs. We have seen shale gas revolution. We have seen the question around CO2 price uncertainty. We have seen the question of water becoming relevant in terms of energy infrastructure. Those are massive uncertainties that are defining or questioning the way we look at our energy future. And I think that's really the reason why we ask the question, well, if you're in the midst of an uncertainty, you don't know where you're going to land, but we see that actually the signals are in place for people. They need to take investment decisions today, and depending on what the thinking is that we can influence now, we may go one or the other direction. That defines a tipping point.
A tipping point. Okay. Let me ask you this. Out of those various issues, some of them very frightening, but what are the positives? What things are exciting you right now? Any technologies coming online? Any sources that you like the look of right now?
Well, our scenarios would obviously say that the two technologies that can have the biggest game-changing impact is, on the one hand, electric storage. On the other hand, the carbon capture and sequestration, or carbon capture utilization sequestration technology. On the electric storage side, if we had a collapse of prices in a way we have seen it in the solar context, then that would actually mean that on transport it would totally game change the outlook. And it means electric mobility would become affordable in non-OECD countries, and that could really dramatically impact the outlook. And I think similarly on the CCS side, on the carbon capture and sequestration side, just imagine if suddenly a breakthrough would either bring down costs or even put the value on the CO2, that would obviously dramatically change the outlook on the importance of this issue.
Yeah. Now, obviously, we're about to begin this year's Congress, but speaking more broadly, do you believe that the global institutions that we have in place now are sufficient to deal with the kind of challenges you're just discussing?
Well, the institutions that we currently have all been defined or have been created in a moment that was in a time where the map looked very different. Yeah. The producing representative institutions have been in a time where the producer's map looked very different than today. So today the question of representativeness is there on the producer side. The consuming representing institutions have been in a time when China and India didn't play that role that they play today, and they are not typically members of those institutions. And we could go on. I think many of the institutions are failing or will fail in the future to deliver if they do not adjust to those new realities, and I think that's really the call for action here. Institutions have to rethink who they are, what they want, and adjust accordingly.
Okay. Well, speaking of institutions, of course, you are the head of one, and your Congress is taking place now. What kind of outcomes would you like to see from this Congress, or perhaps what myths would you like to see busted?
Well, on the one hand, the myth that we see bust is one is obviously the peak oil myth. There is clearly the myth of, is there peak oil? Are we running out of oil? This is a myth that obviously since the game-changing unconventionals came into picture is now really has moved in far distance. That's the first one. I think a second myth that our scenarios tell us is a myth is many want or would like to think that we are flattening out in terms of the global energy demand, and that's simply not true. We see with our scenarios that the demand, particularly driven in non-OECD, is still growing. A third myth is the question of how can we get rid of fossil fuels, and I think our scenarios again tell that by 2050, yes, we can reduce the share of fossil fuels in the global mix, but in absolute terms, that's still a growth in fossil fuels. So those are a few. There is more myth to come, but those are a few of the myths that we want to bust. And I think what we want to achieve really, we make available tools here, our trilemma, our scenarios, the jazz and the symphony scenarios. Those are tools for decision makers. We want to use the Congress to make them useful, to familiarize people with those tools, have everybody walk away with them and use them to take better decisions.
Got you. Well, Christoph, there's a lot to ponder. Thank you for setting the scene, and good luck during the Congress.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that was Christoph Frei, Secretary General of the World Energy Council. But do keep watching. Don't take your eyes off the screen. We've got more interviews, more information, more good stuff coming right up on WEC TV.